She was teacher Sarah, loved by students, respected in the community. But one photo, taken 15 years ago, was enough for everything to crumble. An image of her, dancing on a stage under neon lights. That society used to judge her, to fire her, to try to erase her. What they didn't know is that this same image, this past that condemned her, was ironically what saved her. This is the story of how Sarah was forced to confront her biggest secret, and how she transformed shame into a legacy that changed hundreds of lives. Prepare yourself for a journey about judgment, resilience, and the true definition of a second chance. I was waiting for the paper to arrive. Sarah held the edge of the table, her knuckles white against the dark wood. The room smelled of old coffee and that citrus perfume from cheap office diffusers. She wasn't looking at me. She fixed on a point on the wall, just above my left shoulder, as if she were reading something invisible there. The letter was folded in her lap, white paper marked creases. She unfolded it slowly, smoothed it with her palm. She didn't need to read it aloud. I already knew these letters, the weight of them, the formal language that tries to soften the blow and only makes everything worse. She took a deep breath, the kind of breath that precedes crying or screaming but ends in neither. Just silence. The air conditioner hummed. Outside, someone honked 3 times in a row. Sarah was 42 years old, brown hair pulled into a bun that was already coming undone, short nails, no polish. Silver ring on her right index finger. Simple clothes, jeans, and navy blue blouse. Nothing about her screamed. Everything about her whispered exhaustion. I waited. That's what we do. Waiting is half the work. She began to speak. Hoarse voice, choppy words. She told about the photos. How they appeared first in a parent's WhatsApp group, then spread. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, viral in 48 hours. Photos of her dancing 15 years ago. Little clothing, neon lights, pole dance bar. Her past exposed as proof of something. Of unworthiness. Of incompetence. Of danger. The parents demanded a meeting. The principal tried to negotiate. The education department issued a statement. Sarah was invited to step away, willingly, to protect the school, to protect the children, as if she were a threat. She stopped talking, looked at her hands. She had a blue pen stain on her thumb. I asked what she wanted me to know. Not about the dismissal, not about the photos, about her. Sarah raised her face. Her eyes were dry, but red at the edges. She said she worked 7 years as a dancer, that she paid for college entirely that way, that she never stole, never lied, never hurt anyone. That dancing was the only way she found to not give up. I wrote that down. Not giving up. I wrote and underlined it. The session lasted 50 minutes. She left without looking back. She left the letter on the table, kept it in her folder stapled to the first page. Sarah didn't know yet, but that letter would return. In the second session, she arrived 10 minutes late. She apologized 3 times. She sat on the edge of the chair, body leaning forward, ready to flee. I offered water. She accepted, but didn't drink. She kept holding the glass, her fingers leaving condensation marks. She asked if I thought it was her fault. She had done something wrong. I returned the question. What did she think? Sarah closed her eyes. She breathed deeply again, that loaded breath. When she opened her eyes, she told about the first time she entered the club. 23 years old, newly approved for college entrance, without money to pay tuition. A friend had referred her. She went on a Tuesday afternoon, sun still high outside, but inside everything dark and smelling of cigarettes and spilled drinks. The owner was a fat man with a gold chain. He looked her up and down, told her to spin around. Sarah remembered the song that was playing. Something old rock, strident guitar. She didn't dance. She just turned slowly, arms at her sides, feeling shame rise up her neck. He hired her on the spot. Said she had good girl face. That's sold. Sarah worked from 9 at night to 3 in the morning, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. On other days, she attended classes. Pedagogy, she had dreamed of being a teacher since she was 14, when her Portuguese teacher encouraged her to write. She wanted to give that back. She wanted to be for other children what that woman had been for her. At the club, she learned to smile even when tired, to ignore hands that tried to touch, to keep the crumpled bills in her purse and count them on the bus at dawn going home. The money smelled of sweat and cheap perfume. She washed her hands 3 times before sleeping. Sarah paused. She drank a sip of water. She continued. She remembered the looks, not from customers, those she expected, but from others, from people on the street when she left the club, from the supermarket security guard who followed her once, from the neighbor who stopped greeting her, from the cousin who made a joke at Christmas. Everyone knew or suspected, and everyone judged. She told me she carried this alone. She didn't tell her parents. She didn't tell her college professors. She didn't tell anyone. She just danced, studied, graduated. 5 years like that. Then she left the club, took the civil service exam, passed, became a teacher. She thought she had left that behind. But the past doesn't stay behind. The past becomes a photograph on someone's phone you don't even know. She finished talking and was quiet. The silence was dense. I could hear her breathing, slower now. I could hear the tick-tock of the clock on the wall. I asked if she regretted it, having worked at the club, Sarah thought. She shook her head slowly. She said no, that she regretted having shame, but not the work itself. That kept her standing. That paid for her books, her lunch, her dream. I wrote it down. Shame is not regret. I wrote in large letters. The following weeks were difficult. Sarah tried for jobs at 3 private schools. At all 3, she was rejected. At the first 2, they said the position had been filled. At the third, they were honest. They said conservative parents wouldn't accept it, that it was better she'd look for another field, as if 15 years of experience could be erased. As if dedication didn't count. Sarah started giving private lessons. She set up online ads, shared them in neighborhood groups. Some parents called. Few hired. She earned half what she earned before. Rent was late. Bills accumulated. In the sessions, she oscillated. Some days she arrived determined, talking about plans, about not giving up. Other days she arrived dimmed, body limp, voice low. I've watched her fight against exhaustion, against anger, against the desire to disappear. It was on one of those heavy afternoons that she told about the children. Sarah had been an elementary school teacher, 4th and 5th grade. Children of 9, 10 years old. She remembered each one. The boy who had dyslexia and whom she taught to read slowly, syllable by syllable, until he managed to finish the first book alone. The girl who suffered bullying and who found refuge in Sarah's classroom. The shy boy who discovered he liked drawing during her classes. She also remembered the parents, the meetings, the end-of-year parties, the thank you notes. She had a box full of those notes. She kept them at home under the bed. Drawings, cards, photos, memories of 15 years teaching. Sarah stopped talking. She cleared her throat. She said the worst thing wasn't having lost her job. The worst was knowing that now, for those children, she was just the teacher who had been a stripper. Not the teacher who taught them to read. Not the one who welcomed them. The stripper. I let the silence settle. Sometimes silence is an answer. She asked if this would pass. If people would forget. I said I didn't know. But that maybe she didn't need to wait for people to forget. Maybe she needed to decide what this story meant. For her, not for them. Sarah looked at me. She didn't answer, but I saw something move in her face. It's a small contraction, almost imperceptible. Like when we understand something but don't want to admit it yet. On a rainy Thursday, Sarah had a session scheduled for 3 o'clock. She arrived at 2:40, soaked. Her umbrella had flipped. She was laughing, a low laugh, somewhat disbelieving but genuine. She sat and told. She had gone to the market in the morning. She was in the checkout line when someone touched her shoulder. She turned. Tall boy, 18 or 19 years old, cap backwards, backpack on his shoulders. He smiled and said her name. Teacher Sarah. She didn't recognize him at first, he explained. He had been her student in 5th grade 8 years ago. She remembered. The shy boy. The one who liked to draw. He asked how she was. She still taught. Sarah hesitated. She thought about lying. But she told the truth. That she had been fired. That things were difficult. The boy frowned. He asked why. Sarah didn't want to go into details. She just said it was because of old photos. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he knew that he had seen. And that he thought it was fucking unfair. Sarah blinked, surprised by the word, by the sincerity. He continued. He said she had been the best teacher he ever had. That because of her he hadn't given up on school when his parents separated. That she had believed in him when nobody else believed. That she mattered. And that what she had done 15 years ago to survive didn't change any of that. Sarah stood in the middle of the market, holding a basket with bread and milk, hearing that boy say everything she needed to hear. She didn't cry at the moment. She just thanked him. He gave her a hug, one of those tight ones, and left. She cried in the parking lot, sitting in the car, rain beating on the glass. She let everything out. It wasn't crying from sadness. It was crying from relief, from recognition, from remembering that she mattered. In this session, she repeated his words. She mattered. The past didn't erase that. I saw the change. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't magic. It was subtle, but it was there. In the less drooped shoulders. In the less trembling voice. In the gaze that now met mine directly. I asked what she wanted to do with this. It's with this recognition, Sarah thought. Then she said she wanted to do differently. That she didn't want to wait anymore for someone to hire her. That she wanted to create something of her own. Space where children like that boy could go. It's children who needed someone who believed in them. I asked what this space would be. She didn't know yet. But she would find out. Sarah started researching. She spent weeks reading about alternative schools, social projects, crowdfunding. She set up a notebook with notes. She visited community spaces. She talked to independent educators. In the sessions, she brought ideas, some viable, others not. I helped her separate enthusiasm from planning, to recognize what was possible with the resources she had. The idea took shape slowly. Sarah wanted to open a space for academic tutoring and emotional support. Not a formal school, but a place where children and adolescents in vulnerable situations could get help with studies and someone who would listen to them. She wanted to offer this for free or by donation. The problem was money. She had no capital. She had no investors. She barely had enough to pay rent. Sarah thought about giving up several times, but something in her wouldn't let her. That boy at the market had lit something, and that something refused to go out. That's when she decided to do the obvious. Tell her story, not hide, not minimize. Use what she had tried to bury as fuel. Sarah created a video. She recorded on her phone in her living room, natural light coming through the window. 3 minutes, she looked straight at the camera and told who she was. What she had done, why she had done it, how she had been fired, and what she wanted to build now. She ended the video saying that we don't need to be ashamed of having survived. That everyone deserves a second chance. And that she was going to create a place for children who needed that. Someone who wouldn't give up on them. Sarah posted the video on a Friday night. She turned off her phone. She went to sleep without expectations. She woke up on Saturday with 230 messages. The video had been shared a lot. People she knew, people she didn't know. Comments of support, some of hate, but most of support. People offering help, donations, space materials. Time, Sarah arrived at the next session with her phone in hand, still processing. She read the messages aloud, voice choked. A woman offered a community hall for free for 6 months. A man who had been a teacher offered to help with pedagogical planning. Another said he would donate books. A designer volunteered to create the visual identity. His financial donations already totaled almost $3,000. Sarah looked at me. She asked if this was real. I said it was. That when we stop hiding, we find allies. She laughed, that low laugh again. But this time without disbelief, just relief. The following months were intense. Sarah worked like she hadn't worked in years. She set up the pedagogical project. She registered the organization as nonprofit. She organized work parties to renovate the space. They painted walls, fixed chairs, assembled shelves. She had help, people who appeared because of the video and stayed. Volunteers who came on Saturdays. Donations that arrived in small but constant quantities. Sarah called the space Second Chance. Simple, direct. At the entrance, she placed a wooden sign with the name carved. Below, a phrase, "Everyone deserves to start over." In the sessions, she arrived tired but excited. She told about the challenges, the bureaucracy, the difficulties getting permits, the nights when she doubted if she would succeed. But she also told about the victories, the first child who enrolled, the first day of operation, the parents who thanked her. She was no longer dimmed, no longer with drooped shoulders. Sarah had found purpose. And purpose changes posture. I saw this. I saw how she talked about the children with the same sparkle in her eyes she must have had when she was a teacher at school. I saw how she referred to the space as ours, including all the support network that had formed around the project. One day she brought a photo, the space ready, children sitting in a circle on the floor, Sarah in the middle of them, smiling. She left the photo on the table between us. She said she never imagined that losing her job would be the beginning of something bigger. I took the photo, I looked, I returned it. I asked what she had learned from all this, Sarah thought. She said she learned that we can't control how others see us, but that we can control how we see ourselves. And that shame only has power if we let it. I wrote it down. Shame is optional. I underlined it twice. The official opening of Second Chance was scheduled for a Saturday in March. Sarah planned a simple ceremony. She invited the families of enrolled children, the volunteers, some local journalists. She invited me too. I went. The space was small but welcoming. White walls with colorful drawings made by the children. Light wood shelves with books organized by color. Low round tables, cushions on the floor. Natural light coming through large windows. Smell of fresh paint and brewed coffee. There were about 50 people there. Sarah was nervous. I could see by the way she moved her hands, interlacing and releasing her fingers. She wore a dark blue dress, simple, hair loose on her shoulders. She looked different from the woman who entered my office 7 months ago. When it was time for the speech, she stepped onto a small improvised platform. The microphone squealed. Someone laughed. Sarah smiled, adjusted the microphone, waited for silence. She started talking about the children, about why she had created that space, about what she believed about education and welcoming. She spoke slowly, firm voice, looking at the people. Then she stopped. She breathed deeply. And she told her story. She didn't omit anything. She talked about working as a dancer, about using that money to get her degree, about being fired when the past leaked, about the shame she carried, and about deciding not to carry it anymore. Sarah said she created that space for children who face judgment, who come from complicated families, who have difficult stories, because she knew what it was to be judged by history. And she knew that history doesn't define future. She paused. She looked at the entrance to the space. There, framed on the wall, was the dismissal letter. Sarah pointed to it. She said she kept that letter, that she could have torn it, burned it, thrown it away. But she decided to keep it, not as a symbol of shame, as a symbol of new beginning. She said that letter represented the day she stopped trying to be accepted and started building something true. The silence that followed was dense, good, the kind that happens when words hit deep. Then someone started to clap, then another, then everyone. It wasn't that polite applause from formal events. It was genuine. Sarah came down from the platform with shining eyes. Several people hugged her. I stayed in the back watching. I didn't need to approach. She knew I was there. And that was enough. Sarah continued coming to sessions for a few more months. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. She said our meetings helped her process. to organize her thoughts. In the last sessions, she talked more about the daily life of the project than about herself, the children who attended the space, the challenges of keeping everything running, plans for the future. It just seemed light, not because the problems had ended, but because she had found something worth carrying. In our last session, Sarah arrived with a bag. Inside was a book, album that the children from Second Chance had made for her. Each child had glued a photo and written something, simple phrases. "Thank you, Teacher Sarah. You're cool. I like coming here." Sarah showed me page by page. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. At the end of the session, she thanked me. She said she didn't know if she would have succeeded without our conversations. I said she would have. That the strength was in her all along. I just helped her see it. Sarah smiled. She stood up. She gave me a hug. One of those quick ones, somewhat awkward but sincere. She left. I stayed in the room alone, looking at the empty chair. I thought about all the people who passed through that chair, the stories they carry, the invisible weight they bring. Sarah had arrived devastated, holding a dismissal letter, thinking her life had ended. She left building a space for children who needed a second chance. And in the process, she gave herself a second chance. Sometimes I think about her, especially when I see someone who is at rock bottom, thinking there's no way out. I remember Sarah, and I remember that rock bottom can be solid ground, the place from which we build something new. Months later, I was driving through the neighborhood where Second Chance is located. I stopped at a light. I looked out the window. I saw the space. The wooden sign, the open windows, children playing in the small garden in front. I saw Sarah, too. She was sitting on a bench talking to a girl. The child was showing something in a notebook. Sarah was laughing. The light turned green. I moved on, but I took that image with me. Sarah was no longer the woman who had arrived at my office. She was no longer that broken person, holding pieces of herself, trying to understand what was left. She had become something else. Not by forgetting what happened, but by deciding what to do with it. I don't know what happened to the photos. They stopped circulating? If people forgot? Probably not. The internet doesn't forget. But that stopped mattering, because Sarah built something bigger than the scandal. She built a legacy. Today, when I think of her, I don't think of the fired teacher. Think of the woman who transformed judgment into mission, who used shame as a brick to build something solid. Sarah taught me that we don't need to erase the past. We need to decide what to do with it. Whether we'll let it define us or use it as foundation. She chose foundation. And on that foundation, she built a school. Not just any school. A place where children learn that mistake is not end. That difficult history is not destiny. That everyone, absolutely everyone, deserves a second chance, including herself. I keep Sarah's folder in the file. From time to time, I pick it up to reread my notes. The first page still has the dismissal letter stapled. I look at that letter and think about where it is now. Framed at the entrance of Second Chance. Seen by everyone who enters. Sarah transformed the symbol of her fall into the portal of her new beginning. And in that, she taught me more about resilience than any psychology book. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forgetting, comes from reframing, from taking what hurt you and deciding that now it will serve something else, for something better. Sarah did that. And continues doing it every day, for herself and for every child who passes through the door of that space. I don't know what the future holds for her. Nobody knows, but I know she's ready. Because now she knows what she always knew but had forgotten, that her history doesn't define her, but her choices do. And Sarah chose to build. She chose to welcome. She chose not to be ashamed. She chose to live. And living, I learned from her, is the best revenge against those who tried to bury you. Sarah did that. And continues doing it. Every day. For herself and for every child who passes through the door of that space. If you believe in the power of second chances, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to not miss our next stories.